Hi guys, and thank you for tuning in to episode 1. I'm Aki.
And I'm Rob.
And we're the Curiosity Detectives. Now our goal is to explore everything ranging from the dark unknown, the scientifically obscure, and the socially unconventional. We explore subcultures and beliefs and bring you our light-hearted opinions, mixed in with some pretty heavy truths. I'm going to be honest, tears might be shed. Ultimately we're here just to have fun, and we'd love to have as many people along for the ride as possible. Now Rob, what's on your plate today?
Well, for a maiden voyage, I thought we could discuss a particular interest of mine, which is demons.
A particular interest of yours. Do you ally yourselves with demons?
I go back quite far with demons. Obviously, I've got my own demons, but
we're not talking about that, though, are we, Rob? We're not talking about the concept of having demons in your closet. We're talking literal demons here, aren't we?
Yeah, we're talking little demons. So, the term demon refers to what is usually a supernaturally malevolent being. They heavily feature in religion, mythology, and folklore. And the word demon comes from the Greek word daemon, not to be confused with daemon, which has no negative connotations, and it just means the spirit or divine power. One thing that I find particularly interesting is that it's a feature that seems to be pretty universal in most civilizations and religions, from ancient Egypt to Mesopotamia, Judaism, I'm talking Kabbalah and Talmudic traditions, Christianity, Islam and Hinduism, and it features quite heavily in all of those. Obviously, it means different things to different people, and it gets pretty crazy from there.
Now, can I just ask, do you subscribe to any religions yourself?
No, I identify as an atheist.
Now, I'm pretty similar, but just for those that don't know, we both went to a Catholic school, relatively strict Catholic upbringing, I think, from a school perspective. Now, I never was a practicing Catholic. I didn't go to church, per se. But, demons was never really something that was taught, I don't think. Apart from, you hear about Lucifer dropping from heaven. But a lot of it comes from, I think, superstition from my upbringing. Do you think the same?
Well, it doesn't tend to feature heavily in modern day religions. Most, particularly the Catholic Church, most sort of branches of Christianity tend to feature demons a little bit more sort of metaphorically, rather than some entity that exists. Although, I mean, it has to be said, many do still consider it to be a real thing in a certain sense, but
we'll explore that, because
it does tend to be more a feature of less enlightened times.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can touch on some of that, because I was watching some very interesting videos. But if you'd like to take the lead and tell me what you've been researching.
Well, just a little bit more background. So obviously, I said it features usually in religion, mythology, and folklore, so on. But in Western occultism, it's believed that demons can be summoned and controlled. So you might have seen, there's anything paranormal has become very popular in recent years, on TV shows and literature, so forth. And you might have seen in one of those depictions sort of the conventions of summoning the occult, or things that pertain to demons, where it may be the relevance of their name. In a lot of films, it's referenced like that, and there is particular sort of traditions in Western occultism, sort of like like black magic. That's magic with a K, sort of Aleister Crowley stuff.
The Gathering.
Yeah, but most people know something about demons, and what we want to discuss is basically how weirdly specific some of them seem to be, and how this reflects on human beings.
Yeah.
So, first up, I've got a particular favourite of mine, and anyone that knows us reasonably well can probably...
Is it who I think it is? Because I think it might be my favourite also.
Yes. Yeah. I have spent many a drunken night ranting about this, and it pretty much seems to be where my mind goes.
You really have. Like, we were going to form an intervention. You talk about this guy non-stop.
He's I probably count him as one of the major influences on my life. It's very much of a I was going to say father figure, but I don't know that. It made us feel really uncomfortable. So this is, of course, and I say of course ironically because very few people would know this because they're not weird, is a demon called Papa Bauer. Now, this is something I came across on a rabbit hole on the internet, and in that particular context it was in relation to a subsect of demons which were specifically sex demons, which, sounds quite, it's a nice thing to be a demon of, isn't it?
That gets the viewing figures up.
Yeah, sex sells. So, a little bit of information about Papa Bauer. So, it comes from Zanzibar, which is an island off the east coast of southern Africa, and it's mostly Islamic population, so it very much is informed by Islamic culture and scripture. Anyone that doesn't know anything about Zanzibar, which is probably most people, including myself, which I will actually come back to something in that regard. It was traditionally a trading island. It was involved in piracy, but it was somewhere where merchants often sort of dropped into to ship their wares, etc., and it was a trading post.
Yeah.
But the actual legend of Papa Bauer itself only dates back about 40 years, which, considering, 40 years old, reports have been ridiculously common for this kind of thing, and usually it spikes around every election cycle. Make of that what you will. So, basically, it has quite murky origins, but most, like I said, it comes from Islamic folklore. The most commonly accepted include that a sheikh seeking revenge on his neighbours released a jinn, which is like a genie, a demonic figure in Islamic folklore. And, to make things even more interesting, Papa Bauer is commonly reported to be a shapeshifter. Most reports see him as a cycloptic bat, so that's a bat with one eye. He's often depicted with a prominent and sometimes even multiple prominent penises, which kind of...
Are they all in the same place?
Well, different artistic interpretations have been very liberal with that, but it kind of lets you know what he's about. He
came to play, yeah.
Yeah, he's a bat and he's got cocks all over. Just, you know what I mean. What more do you need to know?
Standard, of course he has. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't
He's extremely adept at infiltrating homes through chimneys and keyholes, and is practically undetectable until it's too late. Once inside, he will sodomise any men, women or children, and after it's done, he warns his victims. I'm assuming he's a he, because, let's face it, women wouldn't do this. So once he's done, he warns his victims that he will return if they don't tell others. So, he wants everyone to know what he's done. So whether that's, like I said, it spikes during election cycles, so make of that what you will. What do you make of that, Aggie?
Now that shakes me a little bit. So he wants you to tell everyone. Now, is that only in his bat form? Like, surely, if he's a shapeshifter, right, he takes the form of a person, maybe a loved one or a family member.
Possibly.
When he say, do they say, call me the Papa Bauer? How do they know that it's not just, the person that they're shapeshifting into? How do they define it as the Papa Bauer? Unless he's his, three-cocked bat form?
It's a very interesting question that you ask. Obviously, it's one that probably occurs to most people as it occurred to me. I don't know, is the honest answer to that.
We'll have to go to Zanzibar at some time and maybe ask a few people what's up with Papa Bauer.
Well, since you mentioned Zanzibar, prior to this, having a very limited knowledge of Zanzibar, other than knowing that it's off south east coast of Africa, former trading post, and the only other thing I knew about it that Freddie Mercury, as in Freddie Mercury of the late great Freddie Mercury of Queen, spent some of his formative years there. Now, I'm not saying that they're connected. I'm not connecting any dots. That may or may not be there. I think you might be onto
something there, because I just watched the. Did you watch the Queen film Bohemian Rhapsody, based on?
No, I haven't seen it yet. No.
Well, it doesn't actually show any of the Zanzibar years, and I think there could be a strong sequel in Freddie Mercury.
Do you think there's been a cover-up?
I think there's been a cover-up. I think Papa Bauer's been mentioned in passing, and it's like some hush money's been passed. I think Brian May knows the truth. I think if you asked him directly after a couple of drinks, he would open up and tell you about what Freddie Mercury's been hiding.
Nah, he just talked about bad jazz.
Now, you were saying about Zanzibar there, and I remember, because I was doing a little bit of reading on Papa Bauer, there was actually riots incorporating the Papa Bauer.
So as a response to his activities, there was riots, he's saying?
Yeah, so apparently people were rioting in the streets, and apparently someone died.
Well, I wouldn't be too pleased about it if someone infiltrated my home, sodomized us, and then, to add insult to injury, insisted that I tell everyone about it. You know what I mean? What do you reckon in terms of a time scale? What do you think he gives you? He's like, you have to, because you could tell somebody on your deathbed, or it could be like, you have to immediately go out after I leave, right? I want you to go straight away, and I'm going to be watching. So if you don't do it, I'll come back and I'll sodomize you again.
But do you think that's maybe where we get all the... You remember when we used to have chain emails where people didn't respond, like someone would come and get you? Usually it was like a creepy dragon like Papa Bauer chain emails, or just go around Zanzibar.
If you don't forward this to 100 people, a demonic bat's going to come and sodomize you.
or someone in the form of Uncle Fred.
Mm-hmm.
It seems crazy. Like, yeah, what limits you to actually telling someone? So is it you have to tell someone in person? I mean, it's a pretty difficult conversation to bring up anyway, at the worst of times. But
so, other questions I would ask as well is also that, what's his whole fixation with sodomy? I mean, I get that if you're raping men, that's kind of par for the course often. But why is he fixated on sodomy?
Yeah, so I mean, let's call this for what it is, or what my take on it actually is.
I'm sorry to take into very murky waters, but...
No, I think generally what we have here is just a run-of-the-mill rapist, or some people that have been unfortunately victims of a sex crime. And
I would probably assume that the sodomy aspect's been adopted by the reports as it's a more sensationalist sort of, or maybe because of any sort of
It's almost like someone's sitting there with a pen and paper thinking of a villain. Like, okay, this villain is invasive. He comes in your home. He's invasive on your family. What's the most invasive thing you can do? Up the arse. Classic.
Well, not necessarily. Many people enjoy it, but I think the point I was trying to make is that it's something that's more often than not quite taboo in most cultures, and also, I mean, it's quite heavily involved in most religious texts as a definitely one not to do,
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm not with you in terms of it's wrong. I mean, in terms of I remember that being featured heavily in many religions and frowned upon, quite often because it's connotations to homosexuality, which
of course
a lot of religions have shunned.
The word Sodom itself, has its own lineage.
Could you tell me what that is? Is that the Sodom and Gomorrah, pillar of salt?
It is Sodom and Gomorrah, yep. And it's a very nice... Well, there's a few different stories, but one of my favourites is the town of raving homosexuals who want to rape some angels and lot offers up his daughters instead. So they're all outside of his house, shouting, "Give away the angels! We want to rape them," because we've never seen angels like that before. They're really sexy, so we want to rape them. Just that's my general take on it, anyways.
That's so the consensus, yeah.
As you do, you offer up your own children instead,
natural defense,
to save the angels. because nobody else has a hand in this, and nobody else could have possibly done anything about that. But it's a nice story. Not.
It's definitely a bedtime read.
So, what I particularly like about Papa Bauer is that it just seems so fantastical. It seems so far-fetched. It's so bizarre. There's obvious holes to be poked in it, left, right, and centre, and it's just so frequent. For these kind of things, usually these kind of urban myths and stuff aren't propagated with as many reports. Now, there's no, as far as my research took us, there's no credible reports. There's no sightings, there's no images, there's nothing like that.
I think that's going to be a recurring theme for everything we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I'd imagine it is, but this is one that's relatively recent in terms of these kind of things. So
I think the recentness of it really strikes me as well. So you're saying that 40 years, that's not long at all, man. That's crazy.
No one, as far as I'm able to tell, no one's entirely sure of exactly when it sort of emerged, but once again, possibly around the time Freddie Mercury was born. But and I'm certainly not suggesting anything. All I'm saying is, in later life, we've all heard the stories about the
cocaine parties, the late night Papa Bowerings,
the little people walking around with cocaine on silver trays and stuff. And who's to say in the dark you couldn't
distinguish Freddie Mercury from a Papa Bauer?
Yeah,
the bad fucking one-eyed prick. No, Freddie Mercury, I'm a massive fan, so I'm a little bit off topic, but again, with this Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't know, you mentioned Zanzibar, Freddie's going to get a mention. So apparently Sacha Baron Cohen was going to be the lead before they got Rami Malek to do it, but apparently there was an artistic sort of difference in opinion, because apparently Sacha Baron Cohen thought they were sort of martyring Freddie Mercury too much, and he wanted them to show more of the outlandish behaviour. Like you say, he was the little people with mountains of cocaines on plates. They did sort of touch on the drug aspect of him, but it was very much a popularisation and almost ode to Freddie rather than a biopic, I think.
Yeah, I think that's all fair points, but not to digress too far.
The demons
just
about Freddie Mercury.
Let's deal with the issue at hand. It's demons today.
It is demons. I think it's very obscure and worrying that it is so recent.
What worries you about it? Are you planning a trip to Zanzibar? Or?
No, but I worry for the people. I just don't understand how an entire population of a country can buy into this belief, especially to the point where there's riots or.
Well, as I understand it, it is a place that's had its fair share of turmoil and political strife. So I think it pretty much goes hand in hand with that, and a religious society tends to be a fairly superstitious one. So
yeah, of course, but terrifying stuff and very interesting. Thank you for going into that for me.
Yeah, so I would encourage anyone who isn't remotely terrified or horrified, offended, aroused even by that.
Suspiciously aroused.
Yeah, suspiciously aroused. To go and do your own little research on Papa Bauer. It's a pretty interesting little rabbit hole to go down. Understandably, there's not a wealth of information out there, but what there is a large amount, surprisingly large amount, but pleasing amount of artistic interpretations of what Papa Bauer looks like. Now, everyone will probably have an image of their own in their head, but I would take a good 20 minutes and just cycle through Google Images on Papa Bauer and see what it throws you up, and I'd safely say it's probably not going to be time wasted.
Now, I imagine this is going to appear on YouTube, so what I'll do is I'll put a pop-up hour image up for everyone now to have a look at. We'll keep it spoiler-free until this very moment. And I hope you're seeing what we're both seeing, because that is harrowing to look at.
I feel like you should announce it, do a countdown, so people don't get scared when the image appears.
Pop-up hour in 3, 2, 1. The cute image of Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, so that pretty much wraps up with First Demon for the day. And moving not so swiftly on, the second one I chose to focus on is a demon called Titivilis, or Titivilis, depending on how immature you are. So, obviously, I should have said this a little bit earlier, but, apologies for any mispronunciations of any of these terms. We are by no means experts in any of this. We're idiots, and I have a heavily regional accent, so I'm not going to apologise for that. Fuck off. So, moving swiftly on, Titivilis is a demon from Christian tradition, and he's said to work on behalf of Lucifer or Satan to introduce errors into the work of scribes. So when I say scribes, we're talking 12th, 13th century monks who would have been transcribing religious texts and in other texts at the time in monasteries. And this one very specifically pertains to them and Christianity. The first reference dates back to approximately 1285, and that's by Franciscan theologian Johannes Galenus, or more commonly known as John of Wales.
Much easier pronunciation.
I mean, it's a very well-sounded name, Johannes.
Does that even go by an easier name as well? Like, yeah. Call him Brian.
Yeah, I think that's a Super Furry Animal song, actually, Johannes Galenus. Although there's plenty of other sources which are also credited, so,
Okay, so it's got some pretty deep roots going here.
Yeah. So, he's being called the patron demon of scribes, and he provides an easy excuse for the errors that are bound to creep into manuscripts as they're copied. This is very laborious work at a time when very few people were literate, and everything was done painstakingly by hand.
Yeah.
And often, like in the adornments to the pages, these monks would sneak in their own little images and diagrams and stuff.
The Easter eggs.
You can Google those. Yeah, little Easter eggs. It was back when Easter was fairly.
People were still using cassettes back then, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, very much so. He's also been described as collecting idle chat that occurs during church service. So you might want to warn your grandma about that one, aren't you?
She's a notorious chatter. She gets shushed every other time in church.
And he would collect the mispronounced, mumbled or skipped words of the service to take to hell to be counted against the offenders. So
the priests.
From what I was what I was able to find out, this very much sort of prescribes to sort of the like divine comedy aspect and Dante's Inferno and the circles of hell, and there were specific sections of hell devoted to clerics and monks and priests who misspoke and mumbled. I mean, what I'm taking away from it is it was the church's 13th century sort of KPI. It was a quality check, and it was just,
that's a key performance indicator for those
evidently, as most people can probably agree, they very much favoured the stick and over the carrot. But he was a figure who went on to sort of garner a bit more notoriety is in a figure of physical comedy. So like that's not like necessarily like Laurel and Hardy. I don't think him and Papa Bauer were carrying like a pane of glass across a road or anything. But he featured in medieval plays such as like the moral allegory, the moral allegory Mankind, which is attributed to an unknown author, and he featured in other medieval pageantry. So, Aggie, thoughts?
Now, this is an interesting one. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name.
Titty-Villiers.
Titty-Villiers.
Or Titty-Villiers.
1300s was a very interesting time for Christianity in general. We're talking the origins, you said the Divine Comedy there, but it's also a lot of origins of what we call hell paintings. Now, hell paintings is very much is exactly what it sounds like. This is when Christianity started publishing paintings which would depict hell, often seen as a fiery inferno. And this is where our modern concept of hell comes from, because it wasn't,
like I said
really
before
depicted.
as well, this was a time when very few people were literate, so the two best ways of getting these things out there were either orally or in imagery, and obviously a very sort of hard-hitting graphic painting would have terrified people in the 13th century, because they weren't as enlightened as I was going to say me or you, but they're probably more
they're probably more enlightened than we've ever been. Yeah, you're totally right. Now, another thing that kind of I feel is a bit of a rough one is you're a monk, right? 1300s, there's not much going on. You haven't even got potatoes at that point. Not until like the early 1600s.
Yeah.
And you're doing an arsehole of a chore. You've got to decipher and read out the Bible and copy it word for word. Not only that, are you doing this monotonous, boring as fuck task. If you mess this task up, there's a demon for you. You're going to hell.
It's like doing lines.
It is. It's like you get detention in hell, and you've got to do lines as you're doing it.
As you mentioned at the opening, we are both products of the Catholic education system, and this is what particularly drew me to it. Although I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form. Religion, and particularly Catholicism, has left an indelible mark on my life. Nonetheless,
of course.
And I'm always quite, just fascinated by like how specific it gets and stuff. And obviously this is in context of an entirely different time, but that's what particularly fascinates me about organized religion, and in this case specifically Christianity, is that like these were this was very much an instrument of control rather than
100%.
Rather than any sort of extolling virtues of Christianity.
There is no way that an entity was created in the minds of whatever deity people believe in, and he or she had the nous to think, yeah, not only are people going to worship me and transcribe for me, but if they mess up, fucking tittiness is going to come and just fuck their shit up.
Yeah.
Also, you were saying that he collects uttered words, like, so what does he do with them? Like, what does he care of? Like, Doreen down the offices?
I think he's just got like much? So in his circle of hell, he's just got like a little suggestion box, and they all go in there, and then at the end of the day, they all get tipped out on his hell desk, and then he spends the next day just going through them, and he's like, right, he's fucked. I'm
just thinking about his hell desk now, and I'm just trying to think of where do people get all their stationery and
what kind of desk do you think it would be?
Yeah, I reckon it would be like a real like solid maple desk.
I'm picturing like a big full-on Scarface desk, and like instead of cocaine, it's just a pile of like little
uttered words from church,
little bits of parchment.
Oh my god!
And he's just sitting at his desk like Al Pacino, just like, oh.
You fucked up the cues with the eyes again. I'm coming for you, Bob. Oh, but But a lot of these things, like, they fall out of favour. Naturally, you've researched this, and that's how you found it. But I wonder how many priests these days would know about such a thing.
Yeah,
or if
I'd
that
imagine
kind of stuff is.
I'd imagine
about.
some do, but I don't imagine it's an entire semester in the seminary. But
yeah. You don't get 20 UCAS points for that.
No. I feel what's very serendipitous about this is that this very specific demon emerged in a very field specific time and place. So like, it's very convenient that the demon responsible for policing errors in the work of scribes emerged at a time when monks were transcribing these things, and these were the ones that were, popularizing it. It propagates itself.
But it also, what's he doing these days? Because now, obviously, we don't have people transcribing scripture. It's all just, put onto a Word document and just print it out.
Do you reckon he's like checking for double spacing and stuff?
I reckon he does. I reckon he's like, someone uses Comic Sans. He's like, oh, that shit's not going to fly with me, son.
You haven't used the Harvard referencing system.
Just Doreen printing out like the weekly newsletter. Just like, oh, Doreen, you old bitch. Welcome doesn't have 2 L's. Well, he's probably jobless now, poor bastard. He's got his 20 legions and nothing to do.
Do you reckon he's in, like, I'd imagine a large pot. I'd imagine hell does have a dole office. I'd imagine hell is a dole office of sorts.
I imagine it is. He's just there collect.
Yeah. So, is there any questions you'd like to ask about Titivolus? I believe every time I say it, I've said it differently, but
Yeah. I think not so much questions, just ponderings. I think it's a very convenient demon for its time. I think that obviously that's where it lies, isn't it?
So are you saying you don't feel like he has a place in the modern day?
I'd like, God bless, it's a product of a different generation, and you know what, bygones be bygones. I don't think there's
nothing we can learn from him.
Nothing at all. I mean, I'd love for him to make a comeback. Krampus was reinvented.
Just like absolutely fuck all.
Poor guy. It's a demon.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for Jerry. That sounds like a pure arsehole of a job, and I don't envy it.
It sounds like he very much enjoyed his work, to be honest.
But all the conversation he's got to sift through, and come on, like 1300s people, like what are they talking about in church?
Do you think he's the original grammar Nazi?
The original and best.
Do you reckon, like, today he just like spends his time like surfing social media, just commenting on random people, and of course he has access to everyone's profiles. Like he isn't held by passwords or any sort of etiquette, and he just asterisk correction on everything, and then he's just adding those names to his list.
What else have you got for me?
I'm afraid that's it for today.
Both absolutely amazing. Now, this has been part 1. We'll go over part 2, and I've got some really good ones for you. Not better than yours, but definitely obscure.
One just closing remark.
Yep.
Off topic.
Freddie Mercury?
No. This is just what's the best? This is completely unrelated. What's the best shoplifting you've ever seen? I was at the shop this morning and I seen some top quality shoplifting.
What happened?
I was at the supermarket, and so two let's just say rogues came in. They were notably shifty to the point where I noticed them initially, and carried on my way around the supermarket, and then heard an alarm going off, commotion at the front of the shop. When I got closer at the front of the shop, there was many people like sort of talking about it and stuff. There was blokes rushing out to chase them. Then when they went outside, they didn't end up catching him. But then I just carried on, found my way up another aisle, and then this bloke came and he looked shifty. So because I was already on high alert, I was looking at this bloke. Then it turns out that he came back in and did a bit more shoplifting. now that obviously I don't condone shoplifting or theft in any sense, but you've got to admire the brass balls on this bloke.
The tenacity,
yeah. And there's always one wife, there's always one woman who knows everything about it. So she was standing at the front saying how she works at Farm Foods and she's seen him all the time, and she was there before I finished me shopping, just talking about it to anyone that would listen, about how she knows it and how he steals coffee. Yeah.
Wow. Going for the high yield products.
And she was there after I'd finished me shopping, paid for it, bagged it, and she was still there just fucking rabbiting on. I feel like she's probably still there now, dining out on this bloke coming back in.
Anecdotes for life.
Yeah. So on the back of that, I was wondering what's the previous to this, probably my best one was I once saw a man come into Greg's, and I was getting served at the till. All my stories start at Greg's, by the way.
It's probably where your story will end.
Yeah, and he picked up I think he got a bottle of Coke out of the fridge and picked up a multi-pack of sausage rolls, and then the person behind the counter shouted at him, at which point he screamed "fuck off" and launched the sausage rolls at the bloke and just took off out the door with the bottles of Coke. And that was probably one of my most entertaining up until that point. So
it could have been a reaction to those vegan sausage rolls I just brought out. Not going down too well.
It could have been like.
Now,
I was just wondering if you've worked in retail, Charlie. You've seen.
My story yet comes directly from that. So there was this guy. This is a series of burglaries, shoplifting by the same person.
Sodomies.
I don't know if I have to edit his name out, but he's
Don't say his name.
Okay, but his nickname was the Pigeon. I will say.
Is it because did he puff his chest out? And...
he literally dressed in full pigeon garb. So this guy, something the Pigeon. I first encountered him at One Stop News. Oh shit! I'll have to edit that out where I worked.
Yeah,
wait. So no, it won't. It's no longer a shop anymore. It doesn't matter. It's disbanded.
Fair enough.
It's fine. So the boss put out
which for anyone that doesn't know is a newsagent. It was a small branch of newsagents around Newcastle city centre.
Anyone who went to Monument 10 years ago will remember that little stall there every time you needed change. And we wouldn't give you change. Anyway, that was me, you bastards. Fuck off. So this guy, something the Pigeon, there was the only person that was ever bought.
Instead of saying something, can we just give him a name like Jimmy the Pigeon?
That's very close to his actual.
I'd just like to know that I don't know this person, so that was pure.
Oh, it's okay. This guy's a piece of shit. So Jimmy the Pigeon, it was the only person that had ever been barred from this chain of newsagents, and we had pictures of him in all those stores.
Yeah.
So he literally would come in every other week and try and steal. Now I did some Google research on this guy, and he is everywhere. He's barred from everything. So I did a spate in retail, did my time in retail for about 6 years, and then I moved on to higher pastures and moved to another retail job. And then I ended up working in a call centre. So my time in the call centre, I was going to work one day and I saw this Subway employee chasing someone. So the call centre I worked in was right next to a Subway sandwich shop, and this person was chasing someone, and I got a look at the person that was chasing, and lo and behold, Jimmy the Pigeon stealing sandwiches.
Jimmy the Pigeon.
Now, my obsession with Jimmy the Pigeon got really severe back in the time when I did work in this newsagents. And me and one of my friends, who's a bus driver now, used to follow him on our lunch breaks. If he came in, we'd take our lunch breaks together and we'd literally just follow him around town and watch him just shoplifting in different places. Naturally trying to intervene, but it was just so funny. Like, he'd go to jewelers, game stores, like, you know, the ones that sell the second-hand games. And like, he was just the most fascinating creature I've ever encountered. So Jimmy the Pigeon, if you're a listener, you're a fucking prick, but you know, I'll always have time for you, mate. I'll always have time for you, Jimmy.
So how many times did you follow him?
I say all the time, about 4 times.
By the way, it's really odd.
It had to be me and like my friend, like, you know, you have your best friends at work, and it was me and like my best friend from work. So every time we were together, we saw him. It had to be done. Well, you got to understand with this guy, he just encapsulates my entire life. Just him being around. Like, if he moved into the street, I'd have to know him. I'd have to go and like find a way to put myself into his life.
Like Kaiser Soze, Jimmy the Pigeon.
Jimmy the Pigeon.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he was a pigeon.
God, you know what? I'm gonna have to Google this guy as soon as we're done here.
I feel like that's. I don't know who gave him the name Jimmy the Pigeon, but I feel like if you were going to be a thief, a pigeon's pretty good. Like, you know, if you were going to adopt a moniker, pigeon's pretty good. Because, you know, although they're fairly contemptible and most people dislike them, like, they're fairly anonymous as well. Like, they're everywhere. But, like, have you ever recognised the same pigeon once? Like,
well, you get those like those sort of white albino pigeons, don't you?
Yeah, but like,
you can never tell it's the same pigeon. You're right.
As I understand it, even people that keep pigeons put rings on their feet so they can tell them apart and that. And you know, some people do like say that. Oh, I can tell them apart. But like, can you fuck? That one looks exactly like that one. And like, unless it's got some real physical deformity, which you know, you notice them ones where they've got like their beak on backwards or something. But like, most people are like. Will see pigeons like on their commute or something, and you must see the same pigeon more than once, but you never fucking recognise it. So I feel like it's a really good thing to try and ape. Like, it's a good thing to try and Jimmy the Pigeon just hiding in plain sight.
I was going to reckon these times I've been spending my lunch breaks following this bloke, I've been following different people every time without even realising it.
Exactly.
All the pigeons look alike.
He's a master of disguise.
Oh,
anyways, I think that's pretty much it. I think we should draw a line under it.
Excellent, guys. Sorry for the waffling on at the end there, but obviously thanks for listening to part 1. We'll come back here with part 2. Ta-ra.
Yep.
Small commercial break, maybe we'll do a small commercial break. It won't be like an actual sponsor. Maybe we'll make one. Who knows?
Maybe.
Probably not, though. See you in part 2.
Pigeon.